Hello, welcome to the second session of day 3. In the last session we talked about some of the updated notes, the updated organization, and this session we're going to focus in on rumination meditation. I've already discussed with some of you the Lamrim and applying antidotes to your specific emotional problems. In Buddhist psychology, there are a host of what they call mental factors, some of which are the primary problems, which I shared, I think, in the group chat a little while back. It's also linked here in this section of the course now. And secondary mental factors. So you have these big primary problems, and then on the back of those, there are a host of smaller problems, right? That are a combination of two of them or something like that, right? So, for example, as we talked about in the meditation section yesterday, there is a mental factor of excitement that's a problem when you're meditating. Excitement is a derivative of attachment. It's something that occurs because attachment is there. Attachment is exaggerating the positive qualities of various objects in your experience. The excitement is when your mind jumps to try to contact those objects, and it can't keep its focus on the object. In the same way, laxity is the other big problem in meditation that comes on a bit later. And laxity is a combination of the mental factor of distraction and the mental factor of laxity. So it distracts inwardly, and it has a tendency, if you stay in a state that's sort of dull and whatever, it has a tendency to go towards lethargy, which is sort of like exhaustion. The mind becomes very groggy and you can't do much with it. It gets kind of spaced out, irritable. So that's a couple of examples for you. So how is it exactly that we do this type of reviewing meditation? Well, some of you who have been around a while have probably heard of Vipassana, but Vipassana, special seeing, or special insight, or clear seeing, rather, is something you can only do if you already have calm abiding. You can't do it if you don't have calm abiding. However, there is a form of meditative analysis you can do before you have calm abiding, where you combine whatever level of concentration you can generate with an analytical process that has a real direction to it. It can't just be random and jumping all over the place and, oh, that's interesting and blah, blah, right? It has to be, you're thinking in a particular order. You're thinking of particular points in a particular order until a state of mind is generated. You very deliberately generated this state of mind through the thinking process, and then you hold it with your concentration, right? So, Pabonka Rinche describes two sort of analytical meditations that are similar but not the same. Reviewing meditation is like looking at a map and you're pointing out the different regions on the map and you're saying, this is the United States, this is the UK, that's Turkey over there, that's Russia. And you're not filling in all the details. So reviewing meditation is more so you're just going bang, 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 bang down a list of things to refresh your memory as to what those things are, but you're not actually generating the realizations of each topic. And the realizations, in this case, are constructed realizations, or sometimes they say, they use some derogatory words for this, but it's not derogatory. It is a step on the way to having actual spontaneous realizations. In the same way that when you go to the gym for the first few times or you're playing a new sport, it's really awkward, right? It's very, very awkward. But then eventually, it's just natural. The way that you dribble the ball is just like so. The way that you bench press is just like so. That's just how you do it. So in exactly the same way, reviewing meditation starts by sort of just becoming familiar with the topic and more or less just you know the right words. Then you do some study, you fill those words out with a lot of meaning. Then you take that meaning and you connect it with experience, you connect it with whatever information is required to generate the actual thing in your mind that is the purpose of all of this conceptual work. So, rumination meditation. As I said, this is an approach that you can use before attaining calm abiding. And if you look at the structure of the Buddhist path, almost everything, when you look at the Lamrim, happens before you get calm abiding. Almost every Buddhist realization there is happens before calm abiding. You get some bodhicitta before calm abiding. You get your renunciation before calm abiding. You get, I don't know, 15 or 20 different realizations of the path structure that are actual changes to your psychology before you get calm abiding. And this is how you do it. Yeah? So this skill in the end will mature into Vipassana and will mature further into the union of calm abiding and Vipassana, the union of special insight and calm abiding, which is the state of mind that you need to get the final, most powerful realizations of Buddhist practice. So very, very, very skillful technique. You're building up your analytical capability, building up your concentration, and they grow together. And they grow, 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 grow. As your concentration gets more powerful, your analysis gets more powerful until you attain calm abiding and you bring these two capabilities together, which gives you the ability to actually get out of this mess that we're in. Now, what is rumination meditation? Here's a very well-known Geshe-la Sonam Rinchen, and he says rumination involves thinking and can be done anywhere. In fact, we do plenty of analytical meditation, rumination meditation, but of the wrong sort. For instance, suppose someone has hurt your feelings. The more you mull it over, the more you feel like humiliating that person publicly. The wish becomes so strong that you devise a strategy. When you have a reliable plan, you carry it out and finally take satisfaction in what you've accomplished. Exactly the same procedure can be used positively. For example, you meet someone in trouble and you want to help them. You think about the various ways you could alleviate their difficulties and decide upon the appropriate course of action. You then implement it to the best of your ability and knowledge. Right? So there's not a, as he says here, not a rigid distinction between meditation and implementation in this case. Remember, the term meditation in Tibetan is gom, familiarization, to become familiar with. Not only to become familiar with, but to bring a particular state of mind into existence. So what are we doing here? You want to generate compassion. So you think about all of the ways in which all mother beings are equal. Then, boom, equanimity occurs. You think about how kind they've been. Boom, the wish to repay the kindness occurs. You stay with that. Boom, the wish for them to be happy occurs. Then you contemplate, oh, their suffering is just so intense. It's so diverse. It's blah, 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 right? Then, bang, the compassion occurs. And when the actual realization, the actual state of mind you're trying to generate occurs through the contemplation process, through the ruminating process, you hold. This is what your concentration that you're working so hard on the cushion to gain is really good for. You hold those subjective states, right? Having a feeling of compassion is a subjective state. You have generated the mind into compassion. And then you hold the mind in that state of compassion. Right? This is not like you've grabbed an object and you're holding the understanding of compassion over here. Oh, yes, very interesting. No. You're generating the whole psychophysical state into compassion, and then holding that compassion, holding that psychophysical state, holding that all-consuming state of wanting others to be free from suffering. Yes? So this is one very, very good example. When you can focus your mind for about 30 seconds at a time, and you can bring your focus back to the object fairly easily, i.e., you've accomplished the first stage of calm abiding, then you have plenty of bandwidth to start doing rumination. So this is why, for some of you who are already doing fairly well at your training, I'm already introducing this kind of practice to you, because you have enough concentration to do an alternating thing where you read the book, you read the text, you generate the points, those points generate an internal state. For example, some of you are working on patience, right? You're reading the text, bang, 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 bang. One point really generates a whole thing, and you go, wow. The correct response to difficulty is not anger. The correct response is patience. Whoa. And you hold that. If you don't have the ability to hold, then this contemplation process won't be very powerful, because the state of mind will come and it'll go, and you have no control. In this case, it comes, you hold, and slowly, because it's a compounded conditioned phenomenon that came into existence due to causes, it goes, ooh, and it starts to slowly disappear, right? And when it gets a little bit not quite intense enough, then you read those 2-3 points again, right? Reinflate, regenerate this state of mind with full force, and hold. And then it slowly dissipates. Maybe you read the next 2 or 3 lines, generate the state, hold. So like that, you alternate the analysis and the concentration. And through this, you can very profoundly transform the way that you do things in real life. You can become fit everywhere instead of just doing stuff on your cushion. And you can legitimately start to address your actual emotional problems that are ruining your life, like being absurdly interested in the opposite sex, or being really easy to get angry, or being extremely jealous in romantic relationships or of other people's wealth, or having unbelievable insecurity about your own financial means, or whatever, right? I'm addressing some of the needs in the room with these, so you know who you are. Also, numerous Dharma realizations don't have this psychophysical emotional component. Some of them are just objects. Some of them are just correctly understanding a topic. So for example, the correct understanding of impermanence is not a psychophysical state. It is an object of understanding. So if you understand subtle impermanence, where this object cannot remain what it is for even a single split instant moment of time, it's constantly changing, has no ability to remain the same because it came from other causes and conditions. That understanding, when it has all the other components in place and is very strong and robust and it's not just words, is what you generate and hold. But again, we're doing this thing. You generate the understanding, the correct image, not static, momentarily existent. Boom. And you hold. And then as it starts to decline, you generate, okay, this point, this point, this point, it's conditioned, if it's not, blah, 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 blah. And then boom, it reoccurs and you hold. And then it starts to decline and you regenerate. So like this, you can transform your tendency, for example, to see things that cannot possibly last forever without changing, and transform them into seeing them the way they actually are. It will definitely go out of existence. It's constantly changing. There's nothing to grab onto as unchanging from its own side, even though it feels that way. We have a sort of deep emotional reaction to the object as though it can remain what it is. This is part of the reason we feel so sad when people we know start to pass away. We think that they can remain what they are without going away, which can't happen. Let's talk a bit more about contrived and uncontrived realizations. That was the word I was looking for, contrived. It sounds a bit derogatory, but it's really not. Volker Rinpoche says, a spiritual awareness, so something like compassion or impermanence, arises after continuous reflection on many scriptural citations and reasoning. So you contemplate all of these details about patience, for example, and it takes a long time, but after 10 minutes of thinking about it, you get a few moments of patience that occur in your mind. This is called a contrived experiential realization. So you have actually generated the experience of patience, for example, by reading all of this stuff, but it took you 10 minutes of work. So it had to be built. Constructed is another word. I actually like constructed better. You had to build it. You had to construct it through a long process of analysis and thinking and looking at this point, that point. That's contrived or constructed. To transform that into an unconstructed realization, it's just like going to the gym. You have to lift that same weight over and over and over, and eventually that's just how your mind is. When you see a difficult situation, your mind generates patience because that's what you're habituated to. That's your habit. Your habit is when difficulties arise, patience arises. Your habit is when suffering is occurring over here, compassion arises. Your habit is when you see exaggerated beauty, you contemplate internal organs and bones and blood. There's a funny story, actually. There was a monk who had been doing a lot of analysis of ugliness. And as you know, monks and nuns have a vow of celibacy, so not getting too lusty is a big point of concern for them. And he had been contemplating the skeleton for a long time. I think he had been doing, I don't know how long, but he had been contemplating this topic a long time and meditating on the interior of the body to try to counteract his attachment to the female form in particular. And he walked out into the marketplace after doing this, and a woman smiled at him, and he saw her teeth. And seeing her teeth immediately allowed him to see or to know that that was connected to her jaw, which was all a big skeleton, basically walking around like a bag filled with organs and blood and all of this stuff that isn't very attractive. And so because of this, his attraction, his lust for that particular woman was subdued. So if you have a big issue with lust, as some young men do and some men do in general, this is a very powerful technique. So it starts out constructed. You build it and you build it again and again and again and again. Then you familiarize with what you've built. You hold it. It degenerates. You build it again. You hold it. It degenerates. You build it again. Over a long period of time, it starts to come up without having to do that. So here's Pabonk Rinpoche again. An uncontrived experiential realization is one which arises distinctly as soon as you bring a subject to mind, and irrespective of any prolonged reflection, just as desire for a sense object arises in your mind without need for prolonged concentration. So when you see exactly that type of person of the opposite sex or the same sex or however you're wired, exactly that type of person who's your type, it doesn't take any thought on your part to go, whoa, that's a great looking person. I kind of wish I could go talk to them, right? Whatever. Or if you're more into food, you see a piece of chocolate cake in the window and you go, "Whoa, I have to have that. That perfect cinnamon roll with a big glazing of right? Whatever." The uncontrived realization comes through habituation. Right now, you're completely habituated to all of these negative mental factors. So almost all day, you're generating lust, you're generating envy, you're generating jealousy, you're generating anger, you're generating impatience, you're generating frustration, you're generating self-doubt, you're generating ignorance, you're generating non-considerate types of minds, you're generating distraction. Boom, 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 boom. Because this is how your mind is habituated on the surface of this mind. All of these waves are these negative mental states. One of the big practices that you have in terms of your training in general is changing the waves that are on the surface so that you're a more skillful person. You do less non-virtue, and most of your mind is geared towards doing virtue and continuing the process of training the mind so that you can reach completion. You can actually reach the end of the process. You need a strong personality with good character and certain character traits to do this. And that's all to do with habits. All these waves on the surface of this unbelievable mind that we have. So there's more details. He gives a lot more advice here. And I give a fair amount of practical advice in this subject. And of course, I end with what we already talked about, tilting the karmic scales, because some of the skills that you build up doing rumination will be the same skills that you apply when you're doing tilting the karmic scales in your real life. I hope that that makes sense. Does that make sense? You're going to be looking at your behavior, right? Analyzing it, going, my motivation is I hate cockroaches. If I kill with this motivation, I'm accumulating a karma whose main component is killing. I need to refocus this. I need to get rid of the disgust for the bugs. I need to refocus it on I need to protect the lives of these humans. Now the main focus of the action is protecting life. And then in the effort, right? So that you can change the habituation, change the habitual pattern on the surface of your mind that has to do with killing. So that the mind becomes more skillful over time. More skillful, more capable, more harmonious. And then this adds to your capability on the cushion. This adds to what they call merit, the momentum of your training headed in the right direction. Obviously, during your study breaks, if you have time, this would be a great little section to read today. If not, definitely find your way there eventually in terms of the course notes, because this is very profound stuff. This is the real meat of the course in my mind. Concentration is wonderful. You need it. You can't do without it. But this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the skill that starts to free your mind once you have a foundation of concentration. So profound. Let's do our 5 minutes. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. May the precious supreme view of emptiness not yet born arise and grow but increase more and more. See you tomorrow morning.